Stephanie Klein. I am an engagement manager with Phone to Action. Welcome to the session, The New Enterprise, How Companies Are Fostering a Culture of Change. Today's consumers are expecting more than ever companies to have values that align with their own. So more than just selling a product, companies are starting to become more outward facing with their corporate values, taking a stand on issues that are important to their buyers. And many companies are also finding that when they adopt an attitude of corporate citizenship, it's actually good for the bottom line. Today, we're going to hear from three experts in the corporate responsibility space. We've got Katie Kincaid, Director of Political Engagement with Lyft, Eileen Braden, Executive Director of Civic Engagement and Corporate Responsibility with JP Morgan Chase. And we've got John Goodwin, Brand Creative Director with Patagonia. Our session today will be moderated by Gabe Klein. Gabe is co-founder of Citify, an advisory services company that focuses on urban change management and works with mayors and CEOs of major cities and corporations. He's also a special venture partner with Fontanalis Partners, a premier VC firm that focuses in the transportation technology space. Prior to that, he was the commissioner for transportation in two cities, Chicago and Washington, D.C., in fact, if any of you have ever ridden on a Capital bike share bike here in DC, I see a few heads nodding, yeah. Or if you've ever ridden a Divvy bike in Chicago, you have Gabe to thank because he brought bike share to both of those cities. Gabe has, yay. Gabe's worked tirelessly for years to redefine the way Americans think about the car, pedestrian, bicycle relationship. I know Gabe very well, and so I put together a few personal photos of him because he's not just a transportation guy. But before working in city government, he started DC's first food truck company, On the Fly. He is a lover of pizza, a snake charmer, and an avid hip hop fan. And as I said, I know Gabe really well because he, advancing slides, is also my husband. And I got out of order a little bit there because I do want to go back and highlight that he also wrote a book last year called Startup City, in which he talks about his private sector experience in bringing the energy and pace of a startup to cities to get projects done quickly and efficiently. So it is my great pleasure to introduce to all of you Gabe Klein.
Thank you. Thank you, Steph. Well, it's great to be here today. And what you really learned from Steph is that I just cannot hold a job, basically. So let's introduce the rest of our panel in a little more detail, since we did that with me. I've known Katie for a couple years now. You've been at Lyft for, what, 3.5 years? So tell us all about yourself.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you all for having me here today. Very excited to be on the stage here with such an incredible group of people and moderator. And it's been incredible content today, so hats off to everyone who's put on this amazing program. So yes, been with Lyft for 3.5 years. Joined, honestly, sort of on a whim when it was this this transportation app that had these really big pink fuzzy mustaches on the grill of the car that were driving around San Francisco. I candidly, for the longest time, didn't know what it was and thought it was some sort of a gimmick. Later, come to realize that it was this Lyft, this app Lyft, and that I happened to have a good friend who was working there. And made some introductions. And I say all of that because it's been, for lack of a better term, an incredible ride. When we started off, we were in 14 cities across the country. We're now in over 350. When we started, I was literally flying around from City Hall to state houses trying to explain this concept where you download this app and trying to explain, in some cases, what an app was to people, and that somebody in their own personal vehicle who had gone through extensive background checks and vehicle inspections and all these things would actually give you a ride. And that the concept really was born out of an idea of maximizing efficiency in transportation systems. That when you actually looked at it, and Gabe knows very well, that 80% of the seats that are on the road are empty. So that means that, as I'm sure as you've seen, as you're driving around in a car and you're in a traffic jam, and you look around, it's usually just one person in that vehicle. And the thought our co-founders had was, what if we could fill those seats? What if we could take the people that were already driving and match them up with people who needed rides? And in fact, there was a lot of people who needed rides. A lot, as evidence of the rapid growth and expansion of us and competitors in the space. So it's been an incredible evolution 3.5 years later, 5 years later of the company as a whole, to see where we've come and how we've grown. We're now doing amazing things like our Roundup and Donate campaign, which we'll get into, but essentially enables people to opt into the opportunity to round up their ride fare to the nearest dollar and go to a charity that they have selected. Our inaugural campaign, our inaugural partner was USO. So I don't want to talk, I'm getting into other things.
Sure.
But that's me.
Actually, I'm going to skip past John here and go to Eileen. Come back to John.
Sorry.
Tell us all about yourself, Eileen. You're pretty new at JP Morgan.
I am. I'm really pleased to be here, especially on this panel. And I was joking previously that I'm here to learn more than I am to impart wisdom, because I joined JP Morgan's corporate responsibility team 3 months ago. Previously, I was at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce here in Washington and got to know the Phone to Action folks because they did all of our digital advocacy for us, and think the world of what they're doing and how they're really pushing the envelope as it relates to technological solutions on how we engage. But joined JP Morgan in their Washington office as the head of civic engagement, and am just really blown away by the firm's approach to collaborating with community partners and what it means to show up in these places where we're both investing capital to make a difference at the community level, but I think more importantly, how we're rolling up our sleeves to be good stewards and good community partners and volunteer opportunities and coding opportunities. So I've learned a lot in a short amount of time. It's a culture shock. JP Morgan has 235,000 employees.
Wow.
So I am very much a number.
It's huge.
It's giant, and but it's global. So there's a really large footprint here in the States. The really cool thing on what we're doing is how we are being good community partners internationally in the places where we're also doing business, because I know we've heard the adage and we all live it, but doing good, in order to do good as a business, you have to do good in the community. And so we're seeing that now at an international scale and how we can make a difference. And really excited to be here to learn from all of you guys in terms of what I should be doing at JP Morgan, but then also, share insights in terms of my time there and at the U.S. Chamber, that is, and now at JP Morgan. And so this, just a quick personal, this little bear and unicorn, she changes shapes. This is my daughter, Charlotte. She is 19 months. She's really fun. And this Halloween, in honor of the election, she was neither a Republican nor Democrat. She was the mystical creature unicorn, which is who I voted for.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
And you guys live in D.C. You're both from California. You're in Arlington, right? But you're in this region.
Yeah, I live here in D.C. I've been here for about 15 years. It's a great city. It's interesting right now, to say the least, as everybody, those of you who are from here are experiencing, and those of you who are not are watching, but keeps it interesting, right?
Oh yeah, it's not boring.
Something to talk about.
It's not boring.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Eileen. So John, Patagonia. John was taking pictures with tons of people backstage because Patagonia is so famous. Or is it you, John?
In the earlier session today, Mr. Patton over there proclaimed me the hair winner of the day, but it's unfortunate that was done before he knew that I cut that off. For the most
You
part,
could have
so
had
I
a
don't know.
career in like a Seattle rock band, right?
Possibly. I do want to reiterate what you all have said too. I'm very honored to be not only here on this panel sharing this discussion, but to be part of today. It's been very inspiring all around, and kudos to those who have put this on. It's very good. I have an almost 20-year history in digital design and advertising. That led me to a relationship with my current employer. I had an almost decade-long client relationship with Patagonia, and I got very close with them, and we kind of grew up digitally together, working on the e-commerce sphere. And before we were able to use more mature digital connection tools with our customers to enable like meaningful advocacy and action and whatnot. 3+ years ago, I moved to California and joined the team that I had been working for on the outside to lead up all of our interactive design, and have since taken on the brand creative direction roles. My role is still, I find it interesting because while I'm leading our brand in environmental activism communications, I still do oversee our digital e-commerce activity as well. So I have a foot in both worlds, the right and left brain of the business.
So like policy on one side and
Sales.
business and on the
Yeah.
other. I feel the same way because I
Yeah.
do like venture capital work, and then I
Yeah.
do work with city mayors and so on and so forth.
You can't have one without the other.
Exactly. Okay, well, I think if we can show a video, we would like to show the Patagonia video.
I'll set it up really quick.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
2
set it
seconds.
up.
For those of you that were here this morning, you heard John and I talking about the Bears Ears interactive film. There were.
Can you pause real quick?
We call
Great.
Yeah. Cool. This is just one of our chapters. This film was, it was again kind of like the right and left brain. It talked about our sport angle and sport interest as to why we were interested in fighting for the protection of this land. But we also highlighted, and we did this first, the cultural importance and heritage of this land, and these two different groups, the sport community and the indigenous community, that came together to fight for this protection, which made it a much stronger fight. What you're going to see here is an intro that just an intro describing the cultural side.
Great. Go ahead and play, please. Thank you.
our ancestral land. And our forefathers have walked and placed their footprints on these plateaus, canyons, washbeds, mountains, and they are still imprinted into our mind.
Our tradition has been to take care of Mother Earth because it fed us, gave us water that gives us life.
This type of work that we're doing now with the entire coalition was never even thought of. For the tribes to get together, it's a form of healing for all of us.
It's not just about preservation, it's not just about education, it's about furthering our own understanding of how we move forward into the future.
I feel that strength and the power that we are going to prevail.
The land is here for everyone. It's a place of healing.
Shashja, we call it Shashja, the bear ears. Yam ulo nan tehya now. Isha mal te tehya tonon elako.
Short but powerful. Well, I was going to start with something else, but since we ended there, why do you think it's so hard, at least in America, for people to connect with the idea of taking care of the planet and taking care of nature? I mean, it seems like it's like the only planet we have, right? And to most of us, I think we understand that, but definitely in corporate America, there seems to be a disconnect. What's your take on that? And how are you guys connecting?
I don't, and this is hard because I in no way want to be, anti-corporations, because that's no way to be in America.
Absolutely.
But, we're rewarded with growth, and there's a constant desire to keep growing, and growing often takes expansion and takes new resources and whatnot. I'm not saying I don't have an answer there, but there's a need to have growth with responsibility. And seeing that these places, if we let this land go, there'll be mining, there'll be drilling, we'll lose parts of it.
Right.
whatnot. And, as goes one, goes many.
So, the way I've been thinking about it lately, because I've been talking to a lot of people about this concept, is that we have this problem with like lazy capitalism. Like you can do well and do good. You can make a lot of money doing good things, but it seems easy to sort of get monopolistic and just sort of extract things from the planet, right?
Yvon Chouinard is famous for many things, but there's one quote specifically that resonates here. There's no business to be done on a dead planet. So he calls himself a reluctant businessman, but he's been a smart businessman, and he has not divorced his ideals from a productive business life.
And I would also say on the other side of the coin, you have lazy government that's not innovating as well. Speaking of government, it is like an incredibly wild world that we live in. Every day feels like a week's worth of news. Every week feels like a month's worth of news. I was actually with a client last week, Fortune 50 company, and we're talking about this. We're talking about civic engagement and how to play a role with cities. And the thing that we came to is that there seems to be such a void at the federal level in terms of leadership. And I'm not just talking about since the election. I mean, the last 7 years we've been in total gridlock, right? That it seems like companies need to stand up and really fill that void in many ways. And some of it might be funding, some of it might be just leadership and saying the right things, taking the right stands. But I'm wondering how sort of each of you feel about the current political environment and the work that you do and how you are sort of standing up and maybe either filling that void or just maybe working with government to be helpful in a very tough time where we're very polarized.
Yeah, I mean, I live on the government relations team. I do our political outreach and engagement with third-party organizations. And in the past 3 years, we have literally built the framework of the regulations that now oversee the industry from the ground up. And in doing so, we work with both sides of the aisle, at the city, at a local, and now at the federal level as well, as we move towards the future and towards autonomous. So at the end of the day, regardless of what your own personal beliefs may be, it's important to look towards the future. And you really have, I've personally have seen, it's been an eye-opening experience in that you realize that when you get down to it, there is a little level of civility that is still there. Unfortunately, the rhetoric that is usually kind of gets the most attention are the more polarizing things. But I think that one thing that I am deeply proud of Lyft is we've always had a commitment to civility and to community, and I think that there is a responsibility for all of us to step in. And while the rhetoric that's out there might be kind of negative, that there are things that we can be doing every day as individuals, as companies, as communities, to support one another, no matter your political beliefs or your religion or your appearance or your sexual identity or whatever it may be. And Lyft's foundations was on that as well.
Promoting tolerance.
Promoting tolerance, promoting community, back in the day, it was, you got in the front seat and gave the driver a fist bump. Now we've you don't have to do that, and some people still do. But the basis.
The pink mustache.
And the pink mustache, and was to break the ice. But the point was to get to know these people.
Right.
These are your neighbors. These are your community members. These are, they're giving you a ride, and there's going to be some money involved in it. But these are humans. These are people, and people you might never have come across in your daily life, and now you will. So maybe take the opportunity to have a conversation with them.
Great. Awesome. So really grassroots. How about you guys?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, with the saying, all politics is local, I think it's easier to digest in your community. And you're able to make, it's easy to be disillusioned by what's happening right now at the national level, certainly, but you have to start somewhere. And I think it's better to start in your own community and build those relationships outside of ideological battles or political stripes and say, this matters to me because I live here. And that small business expanding, or this nonprofit thriving, or that school continuing to do well, that feels real. And so a lot of our engagement civically is at the local level and saying, who are these folks? And then, by the way, you see, most folks who get into politics have sort of long-term goals, so they might start as a city councilman and then, be the next member of Congress. And if you can build those relationships based on the work that you're doing together, I think it's a much more productive relationship. And I think it's important to build it when there's not an ask associated, right? So it's not lobbying, hey, we need this from you now. We're here, here's how many people we employ, here's the footprint, here's the amount of money that's gone into this community or jobs that are created as a result of that, the amount of schools that are able to educate children. And then let's build a relationship based on these things where we have common ground. So when there is a moment in time, you've already built the rapport and it doesn't feel so transactional. So I think that's a big part of how we engage civically with those local civic leaders. And then of course, importantly at the federal level as well, and I'll say, our CEO, Jamie Dimon, is in Washington every other week because he gets, in order to be at the table, you have to be in the dialogue and having a two-way dialogue. And it frustrates a lot of folks because they see that in some ways as being complicit in what's happening, but his view, and he says it, and I've come to say it as well, he's a passenger on the plane and he's rooting for the pilot, right? And that doesn't, not everybody agrees with that, but we want to be a part of the discussion so we can shape good, thoughtful policy that benefits economic growth and opportunity for everybody, not just for corporations. Right. And to go back to your point on, environmental best practices, I think a lot of this is now best practices. Mm-hmm. There was a time where corporations were not being responsible as it came to how, they were treating the environment. But I think now you're seeing more and more it's an imperative. And it's an imperative that's being driven by the customers and the consumers who are saying it's not enough to show up, and market and reach out to consumers. You have to make investments in the long term.
So it's tied to money. I mean, you see when people flex and say we're going to spend our money here or there, people pay attention. And you guys, from early days, have been about what you're about. And also like you and I work in the urban space, you work in both, but you're protecting rural land, so that's interesting too.
And it goes back to that local topic. From the beginning, the grassroots environmental grantee program has not exclusively, but I'd say 95% been about funding those in the weeds, local small groups with very small comparative donations to the money that is out there in the world, like $5,000, $10,000 grants to this 3-person group that's cleaning that up, that's helping this, that's lobbying that local group. That's where the money actually works the most, the cleanest. That said, we're doing stuff like you just saw, and we are asking people to speak up at the federal and national level in ways we never have before. This is new to Patagonia. It's interesting the way we are combining, it's interesting to me at least, we're combining what we do with these local groups and helping elevate their messages to the national level. So we're still rooting it in our local grantees.
Awesome. And you were just talking about being bipartisan and how important that is. And it feels like there's it's no longer Republican and Democrat. It's like Republican, Democrat, and sort of crazy. You know what I'm saying? And I thought JP Morgan exhibited great leadership this week, and it got sort of lost in the news because we were talking about so many other crazy things that are happening, like horrific shootings on both coasts. But JP Morgan Chase said, you know what, we're going to pull all our advertising from NBC News because of the Megyn Kelly interview with this conspiracy theorist slash sort of someone that really is about hate speech, right? And so I feel like you have people wrapping themselves in one party or another, but really they're not about those things. And there's a fine line between hate speech and speech. You want to support free speech. So that was a very interesting stance for a big corporation to take.
Right. Yeah, I think from the advertising side, you can't control association with every type of brand or where you show up in newsletters or on television and sort of what the bookends to what your advertising might be, but where you can exert control, you should. And I think that was a perfect demonstration. It wasn't a show or a topic that we wanted to be anywhere near. for good reason. You know, it was controversial, but more importantly, I think it was taking a stand. When you have, on occasion, those moments in time, and I think it's an important platform and a necessary one to use it to say, nope, you know, calling Sandy Hook a hoax, nope, not going to be anywhere near that.
Yeah.
And again, it's incumbent on corporations to be able, you know, to choose those moments in time and say, this is a bridge too far.
And civic engagement is sort of the key. Like, what is it, Breitbart News, which also had some pretty conspiracy theorist stuff on their site. There's been this lobbying effort, civic engagement platforms being used to get people to say, you know, we're not going to support companies that advertise there. They've lost 90% of their advertisers in 3 months, which is incredible. You guys are in a super competitive situation. I won't name the big company that you compete with, but you're in a very competitive situation. They're having a really rough time right now. You guys have sort of always stuck to your guns on your values. But really, I mean, you're not just competing for customers. You're also competing for talent. You're competing for relationships with local governments, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, how is your approach, like how are you separating yourself from the other or the pack, and how are you using technology maybe to help you get there?
Sure. I mean, I think from the get-go, and I alluded to this before, you know, we've always, in building the framework and for the industry, you know, we had to work with all sides of the island, and we always very consciously so took a very collaborative approach. You know, we recognize many of us came from background, you know, working in government. I forgot to mention I was a former staff member, communications director for a state senator in New York. So I say that because there was an understanding of like what it means to be in government, and that you know, a vast majority of those who are elected officials entered into public service just for that, because they wanted to do civic. They cared about their constituents, and they wanted to give back. And so going in with that mindset, going in with a collaborative desire to find solutions that would allow for this new industry to continue to grow and evolve and thrive. I mean, the Lyft of today is very different than the Lyft of 3 years ago. And that is why we had to fight so hard to have a regulatory framework that allowed for that evolution and for the continued evolution, but always doing so with respect. And I think on the digital side of things, you know, our Roundup campaign, it's, you know, we have, you know, we don't just compete for, you know, for customers from the passenger perspective, but also for people who want to choose to drive for the platform. You know, they have to make a choice, or they don't have to make a choice. They can drive for both, and many of them do. But we certainly want to be a platform that the most people want to participate in. And our ideal world in the future, we're all Lyft drivers at some point, you know, if you own a vehicle. And not just, and you do so on a part-time basis, on a supplemental basis. So it has to be something that resonates and that treats all these different constituencies with respect, and allows for people to, even when they're taking a ride, to take action in support of an organization or a charitable cause that they're in support of.
So how much, sorry, I'm just going back to this so people that come know who we're talking to. How much of civic engagement, or the civic engagement that all of you do, is about internal also, about people wanting to work for a company that has values that they agree with, versus the external?
That's
you're the prime example.
I wasn't looking to move to California. We were discussing this before. I had a very happy life in Chicago, and I had a wonderful relationship. I wanted to work for this company, and it was enticing to work for what I consider to be one of the more non-traditional companies out there. We're lucky because we're private. You know, it provides us a lot of opportunities and whatnot to combine that. We offer environmental internships to anybody at the company, where you get to travel for a month at a time to work on vetted environmental projects. That draws a lot of people there. And there's many reasons people like to work at Patagonia, but on the environmental advocacy side, and how you can weave that into your daily work, whether or not, you know, that is your daily work at Patagonia, is a big draw to many people.
Awesome.
It's a huge part of our HR efforts, is showcasing corporate responsibility and giving employees a way to be a part of that, both in terms of retaining our top talent and recruiting it. So what we're doing at hiring fairs and college campuses, but then as part of that, so if you come in, you join the firm and you're a banker and you're a teller all day, how can you be a part of some of this feel-good work as well? And we are leveraging our best talent, which are the expertise and skills and relationships of our employees to do good in their community. And we do that through volunteer opportunities, understanding how this all interrelates. Sometimes it's as simple as knowing the importance of recycling, right? And I know that's probably oversimplified. Or it's we send folks out for 6 months to go partner with a local nonprofit. We give them a leave from work and we say, this issue better than anyone else. We want you to give that capacity to this nonprofit so they can do great things at the community level. So, it's making sure employees, from an internal perspective to your question, can be a part of what they're seeing as part of the firm, and that it's embedded in the fabric of the corporation, and it's part of the culture.
So there's like this long-term play where you work on creating this great culture within your company. You want to promote that to your customers, to your drivers, driver partners, whatever you call them. And then there's like the quick stuff, right? Like you see how fast somebody loses a TV show, when they say something crazy. And I know I start getting updates via text from civic engagement platforms saying like, do you agree with this? Change.org or phone to action or whatever. No. And these things work. And so as you're run by radical leftists, but you are a capitalist company, right? And,
Absolutely.
And you have to make business decisions. And so how do you guys, and not that you always make the decision, I'm sure they're made at high levels, but how do you think these decisions are made quickly to stop advertising on NBC or or to, what did you guys do recently?
Donate $1 million to the ACLU.
Donate $1 million to the ACLU, like wham, like that. Woo, props. How do those decisions get made so quickly?
I mean, in our instance, it was our co-founders. It was plain and simple. Our co-founders, there was action taking, it was in a very intense and crazy time. It was when the first immigration ban came out, and our co-founders had a very strong feeling about this, and it's also the fact that there are the community of participants, either whether it's passengers or drivers, are incredibly diverse, and a lot of them, whether they're passengers or drivers, are refugees or have come from different circumstances and and come from other countries, and this is their means of kind of economic opportunity to get a leg up. So it comes from the gut. And one other thing was actually just announced today is we have come out with a commitment to climate in which this is, one could argue in partial response to what's going on with the Paris Climate Accord. And, so we have a series of commitments, one of which being that in the future, all electric autonomous vehicles that will operate 100% on renewable energy. And that by 2025, we will provide 1 billion rides on these all-electric AV cars, autonomous vehicles. So I think that there's a number, and that again, driven by our co-founders.
So it sounds to me like you're saying like the more you have core values, the easier it is to make these decisions, right?
Absolutely. And that you have, buy-in at the most senior level, that your co-founder said that instantaneously, not to say it's top down, but you have folks who know what those principles are and they're willing to take a stand when,
Right. Last year in the holiday season, right after the election, my owners, being who they were pretty down, and they did not feel like celebrating the holidays. They didn't want to. We never make a big commercial push on Black Friday. They wanted to shut us down.
Oh yeah.
They wanted to shut us down, and it was my responsibility to communicate why we were shutting down. And honestly, it just wasn't feeling right. Like the negative, we had just come off of a long and intentionally negative Vote Our Planet campaign, and you see how well that did. Overnight, me and my team, we were just like, this just wasn't feeling right. My young designers came in the morning, it was like, why don't we just give it all away? It's like, that's a good idea, Taylor, but it's never gonna happen. Like an hour later, I'm sitting with my vice president and director of PR, and we're metaphorically banging our heads on the table because we can't quite unlock why we're doing this. And I brought up, it's like, Taylor had an idea. Why don't we just give it all away? 20 minutes later, we had buy-in from the CEO and the Chenards, the owners. And it was 8 days before Black Friday, and we ended up quadrupling our best Black Friday and selling over $10 million of product worldwide that we infused completely into our environmental grants program.
That is amazing.
It wasn't even profits, all sales.
But that's why
It was just a snap. When you said it, when you have those core values to rely on, and you have the need to act, you have the means to act.
So you must. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I would just add, and I think that the way that it really resonates is when there's a consistent demonstration towards that.
Yeah.
And I think that, with you both of your companies and us as a new one trying, getting towards that is developing the track record so that it doesn't ring hollow when you do something like that. You know that, no, this was in the gut. This was who we are and not some PR play.
Right.
But like all of you guys have reacted very quickly. I've seen all three of your companies react very quickly to things. We live in a different world now than when I was growing up and Walter Cronkite was on TV. And, it's like people say something, it's on Twitter, instantly, and then people responding to it. And then by the time your plane lands, you find out that all these bad things have happened. Thank God there's internet on the plane now. So how does civic engagement technology help you to respond quickly? Like you made that decision 8 days before Black Friday, but felt confident that your customers would understand and know. It wasn't like that 20 years ago.
No. Yeah, it was an exciting time. I mean, honestly, with all of our efforts, you can go into things with a certain amount of certainty, with a little bit of we'll see how this plays out. That one just felt really good. It felt really good, and it energized the whole team. We pulled people off everything. It was all hands on deck. We rolled it out even to in-stores within just 3 days. It was a pretty simple message, and that's also why it worked. That one was simple, 100% for the planet. That's all it means.
That is
Simplicity is the key to that. We pulled out of our biggest trade show in Utah as well, based on the Utah's government towards the protection of bears' ears. That one was a little bit more belabored, but it still felt good in doing so.
I would also add that, just the sheer nature of, I think we all now utilize technology in different ways. We are a technology platform, we have incredibly access to a very large population of community of passengers and drivers.
So you can leverage that.
So you can leverage that. Now you have to be careful, you have to be respectful, obviously, of not to over communicate and how to communicate and when, but that is certainly a benefit that we have that, definitely obviously didn't exist 10, 15 years ago, and that I think still a lot of companies they're trying to amass that email list, but that's baked into our operations.
Right, and you can actually bake other apps sort of into your app to make social change, right?
Yeah. Hence with the Roundup. That is all through almost exclusively through the app. There's is the ability. Actually, part of it you can go online and do it as well if you've got an iOS. But yeah, it's right there. It's click. It's everything is made to be as easy as possible, including
I don't think we have that in DC, the Roundup yet.
So right now it is only available on Android. It will be coming to iOS very soon.
I don't know.
We had to deal with some different terms of service with iOS, but we're getting there. So all of you, assuming all of you have Lyft on your phone, which hopefully you will, and we'll get you there. And our general manager is in the audience, Steve Taylor, so we can all work together to get all a Lyft on your phones.
Awesome. So. Let me ask you guys a question. Do you think all this technology that we have and we have coming at us can make our lives better? It's sort of a really broad and big question. But, whether it's doing more good, making people's lives more frictionless. I always say the best technology is the technology that's running in the background that you don't see. That's just sort of back there making things easy. And with what we're trying to do in our roles, do you think we can make people's lives simpler and better? What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yes?
Yeah.
A true believer. All right, tell me.
Well, I mean, I think certainly some of these technological shifts are leading to some of the big cultural challenges we're having in terms of displacement and population shifts. But if it's leading changes, it's incumbent upon us to use it for good and figuring out what that looks like. And I think, putting on the corporation hat, that looks different for every business or entity, but if we recognize that not everybody's able to partake in some of these changes, then we have to give an opportunity for them to be a part of that and find what those avenues are and how we can bring more people into the fold. So I think yes, I think it gives us better insights into what's happening in real time and how we can democratize that and bring more people in is, in my mind, because being responsible citizens is an imperative. We're going to only see more of it.
Great. John, you have any thoughts?
I feel like we're still figuring it out. I'm not prepared to call one side for the other yet. Well, I do believe, and I've seen and been part of a lot of really good uses of technology, and what you all are doing, some pretty amazing things. I know we see the negative side to it as well, and maybe that's just the new norm, the new good and bad. So the answer would be yes, because if the good outweighs the good we could do without it.
Yeah. Awesome.
I mean, yeah, I think that, we've, technology alone has unlocked a whole new form of transportation, which I believe has fundamentally changed for a better people's lives. It's given people transportation access who never had it before, whether they lived off of the typical kind of transportation infrastructure grid and couldn't afford a car, or whether they were looking for another means for economic opportunity and development, and suddenly they could use their own personal car to achieve that. So absolutely, I believe. I mean, yes, I do believe, like with anything, you've got to be careful, and there can be a downside. And I think we could all stand to be off of our phones a little bit more. But I think in general, I'm really proud and honored to be a part of this technology that we have at Lyft.
All right, I'm going to play John McLaughlin in my little closing statement and give you the answer. The answer is maybe. The answer is that the technology is just a tool, and it has incredible potential and opportunity. I'm just summarizing really what you guys just said. But it's only a tool, and we have to use it for the right reasons, right? Otherwise, it can be distracting. We can think there's a silver bullet to every problem that's about technology, not about relationships, and so on and so forth. But thanks so much for listening to Katie, John, Eileen, and myself. I hope you enjoyed it, and bye-bye.